lies that we have been told as we have been raised. Women should not say these things because it makes you look vulgar and it makes you look wrong. Now, I got inspiration from a book that I recently read. What's going on, guys? Thank you so much for tuning in to yet another episode of Walking Manifestator, where we talk about all things that are geared to help you in your growth and in your journey as this spiritual being having a human experience in this physical body of yours. I'm Alexa, I'm your host, and in today's conversation, we're going to be talking about some lies that we have been told as we have been raised. Now, I got inspiration from a book that I recently read. There's a lot of things in this book that really resonated with me, that were things that I had thought about for a very long time, but sometimes you get intimidated to vocalize some of these things. Even how this actual word that Vishen Lakhiani talks about in his book, The Code of the Extraordinary Mind, and he says the word bullshit and he uses the word fuck a lot. And that to me is something that I feel very uncomfortable saying around other people because of these rules, right, that we have in society of a woman should not say these things because it makes you look vulgar and it makes you look wrong and all these things. And in this book, he really defies a lot of these belief systems. So I want to defy these belief systems with you, and I want to share my perspectives and how this actually does help in this spiritual growth process, aka your mindset development, and also in everything you're looking to manifest in your life. So without further ado, let's dive deep into this conversation. I'm going to be talking to you about ideally 5 of these rules, as he calls them, which that is the definition of a bullshit lie, basically a bullshit rule that we have been set up. And in his book, which I highly recommend you check out, he talks about how in society, these rules that have been set up are set by people no smarter than us, and by people that at one time these rules worked for, but it doesn't necessarily mean that is what's working now as we have evolved in consciousness, which I really love this concept. I really love the fact that something I've always told myself as I was growing up, and again, I would be ashamed of even saying it out loud, is like, who decided what a word is? Like, who said pink was going to be the color pink? Who said blue was going to symbolize blue? And who said that a table was going to be a table, right? That was going to be the definition of it. And interestingly enough, that's the reason why I called Walking Manifestator what I did. Instead of saying manifestation, I wanted to defy this word. And for me, when I created it, Walking Manifestator was something that I always would talk about with my son when we would say our affirmations in the day. We would say we are walking manifestators. The manifestation part never was something that really felt like it rhymed. So when we would say I'm a walking manifestator, that worked. And if we said we are walking manifestations, that just didn't really flow off the tongue, right? So some background there of really just define these things. And sometimes we don't really stop to think about and question where this came from. Where is this rule that we are adopting coming from? So the 5 rules that he talks about in his book, one of them is the college rule. The second one is the loyalty to the culture rule. He also talks about the religion rule and the hard work rule. Now, we can add a ton more to that. The 5th one that I decided to add was the manifestation rule, because a lot of people sometimes just think that that is completely fake and that manifestations are a lie and that they don't work. But as we've talked about in previous episodes, you are a creator. Therefore, if you believe something is going to serve you, or if you believe it's not going to serve you, the universe is going to support you unconditionally in whatever it is you choose. So we're going to be talking about some of these things, exploring some of these concepts. And then of course, at the end, as always, I'm going to invite you guys to join us in our community. In our school community, we are putting out a ton of content to really help you include these practices in your life. It's one thing to hear a podcast while you're washing the dishes or picking up your kids or jogging, working out. It's another thing to sit down, and if you're watching this right now on YouTube, if you're not watching it, I'm picking up my notebook. I have a ton of literally notebooks that I like to make sure I'm constantly actively working on these things so that I can actually embody the concept and understand it further. So I highly encourage you to get some of our free workbooks that we have in the community. Feel free to join. It's absolutely free to join. Just putting that out there because I do believe that as a community, we are making a ripple effect. And I have seen this. I have seen how these conversations play an impact. I literally just went to the hairstylist, and we're having this like deep conversation. And every single time that we have like this deep conversation, it makes an impact in somebody's life. And you can be making somebody's life just have a different perspective. So with that being said, let's talk about the first Brule, in the college Brule. This is something that really resonated with me because as I was growing up, I told you guys in my first podcast that I wanted to be an attorney. And I wanted to be an attorney. This was literally in 3rd grade. But I went up to my French teacher, which now I understand again where she was coming from. I hold no resentment for her. But in that moment, of course, she shattered my dreams and aspirations because I told her, hey, I actually want to be an attorney. And when she heard me say that to her, she basically looked at me and she said, there's, easier things that you can focus on. There's other jobs. Something along those lines. I just remember hearing the fact that I couldn't do it, right? And when I heard that from her in that moment, of course, that played a huge impact in a lot of the decisions that I made moving forward. Of course, at that time, I didn't realize that. Now, looking back and dissecting my life to try to understand myself better, I've realized that happened. And I want to ask you, what conversation did you have at one point, either with yourself or with somebody else, that impacted your life in a way that you haven't realized? And the college one is a huge one because at that time when that happened to me, I remember that I decided that I was gonna definitely try my very best to be something in life. I was very confused, to be honest. I didn't know really what I wanted to be. But as I started growing older, I had this idea behind the fact that I wanted to get my college degree done. So I started going to college, and when I was there, I felt like a fish out of water. I never really liked school. I loved science. I loved history. I loved understanding more about things, but I didn't like actually being in school. And this is not to say drop out of school. This is not to say that there is no benefit in being a college graduate, because there's some amazing individuals that went to college that actually have made amazing impacts in our life. But what I do think, and Vishen talks about this in the book, is that you don't necessarily need to go to college to get the degree, to get the job, to get the family, to get all these things that have been constructed by our culture. And of course, this is something that it really depends on the culture and on the perspective that you have. But it's important to question these things, because I oftentimes have conversations with people and I ask them like, oh, what inspired you to want to do what you're doing? And 9 out of 10 times people don't know, or 9 out of 10 times they say, honestly, it was just because of the money. Like, I looked for something that was going to make me the most amount of money, and that's what I focused on. So it's important to understand how these rules that you have set up, the Brules, right, are impacting every single life moment in your journey. Now, the second one is the culture scheme, the loyalty to this culture that we live in. We should marry within our ethnicity. We should marry within our religion. We should marry in general. And this is something that, to each their own. to be quite honest with you, because I can argue here that I've seen amazing people that are divorced, amazing people that are married, amazing people that are single, never have been divorced, never have been married. And it's really something that comes down to the person and it comes down to the situation, but we shouldn't allow ourselves to feel less than just because we don't have what that culture society has made us believe we need. Maybe you're a single mom that is doing her very best to continue to work on yourself, and you know you could have a relationship, but you're so focused on constantly working to be the best version of yourself so that you really can show by example to your kids that you are actively implementing these principles in life, and somebody comes and tries to make you feel bad. Oh, you're not married. Oh, you don't have kids. Oh, you're still going to school. All of these culture paradigms does not have to stop you from being and actually being comfortable with where you are in your journey. Another Brule that he talks about is the religion Brule, and we've talked about this in the past. I consider myself spiritual. I don't consider myself somebody that practices a religion. And I've shared my thoughts before, and this is not to knock on anybody that practices a certain religion, because I do believe that there's some people that actively act out the religion in the way that we as people that practice spirituality also practice spirituality. I'll give you an example. Somebody that might practice a religion, whatever that might be, Catholic, Christian, whatever, they might go to church, listen to the message that they're listening from the priest, go back home and actively practice the art of awareness, right? Actively practice how they're treating others, how they're interacting, what they're saying, what they're consuming. Great. But then we can have the same exact person, right, that went to church and comes back home and is acting like a complete horrible person with their family, or is cutting off people and flipping them off, or is judging them, or is talking about like, oh, did you see what Mary did today? Oh my gosh, how could she have gotten a divorce? Or oh my gosh, how could they be saying that to their kids? And honestly, it's the same thing when it comes to spiritual people. Some spiritual people, they're so big on their crystals and all of these, like, you know, practicing gratitude, meditations and incantations, but yet they're out there going and judging people and treating them badly because they believe in a religion. We need to learn how to stop pointing the finger to other people in order for us to really work on ourselves and actually see these other people as the perfect opportunity to see a mirror. My grandmother would always say this saying, which is, what we cannot see, she says it in Spanish, so I'm going to translate it as best as possible, but because it sounds better in Spanish, but she basically would say, like, what you can't see in the external environment, you might have it in your home. Basically meaning what we've talked about in the last episode. If you see somebody with pink hair, blue hair, and they triggered you, maybe you're just mad at the fact that you were never allowed to wear that type of hair color in your home. You were judged by wanting it at a very young age. Therefore, now you have grown and you act out on everybody that has the confidence to wear something that you were never able to embrace. Now, this next Brule is the hard work Brule. He talks about how we have to work very hard to be successful. And honestly, this is a Brule that I'm very, very happy about the fact that I've been able to really move out of, because for the longest time, and I shared that with you guys, I worked myself to a degree in which literally just 2 years ago, I was in bed rest for an entire week because I could not walk. Like I literally had to, and you might think I'm exaggerating, I kid you not, I was crawling myself to the bathroom of how much pain I had nobody to help me with. And no, I'm not saying this story for poor Alexa. No, because I actually like telling this story now because I feel like a badass of the fact that I pulled through it and that I actually moved forward from this experience. In that moment, I did not feel like a badass. In that moment, I felt really, really horrible. My grandmother, for those of you that know, I take care of her and my grandfather, so they live with me. I have a 2-story home, and they live basically their area downstairs. They have their own bathroom, they have their own area, they have their own bedroom. So I'm upstairs, I'm literally in pain. I can't go to the restroom, so I'm like crawling myself to the bathroom. And I say this because I worked myself to such a degree in which I did that to my body. Knowing everything I knew about manifestations, I ignored my body because of this bullshit rule that I had that I need to push myself to the very, very limit in order for me to actually achieve success. Ironically enough, that situation, which is why I tell you whenever you go through a bad experience, and I'm doing little air quotes over here because nothing is a bad experience, it's just happening. You either give it the label of a bad or a good experience. But whenever we go through that experience and it's in that negative perspective that we have, it's up to us to change that perspective and say, what am I gonna learn from this experience? And now that I look back at it, in that moment when everything happened and I decided, I promise universe, I promise God, I'm gonna take care of myself, I'm gonna take care of my temple, I'm gonna prioritize more of me, pampering me. And now looking back at it, that was one of my best years that really propelled me forward. And from like a monetary example, it was one of my best years that also helped me just propel my business to a further degree. The moment that I decided I wasn't just gonna try and do everything. I decided that I was gonna hire an additional assistant. I decided that I was gonna hire a transaction coordinator. I decided that I was gonna actually do more things to help me have more freedom. I decided that I was gonna prioritize me because I was literally the person that had no boundaries with my business. If a client was calling me at 11 o'clock at night, I was answering the phone because I have my real estate team. So I was literally neglecting all the boundaries that are so important for you to set up. And now that I have these boundaries to such a degree that I will not compromise on, unless I have like a client that's like from Germany or from like a different continent, then of course I know that they're gonna have like a different schedule. So I'll work around that. But for the most part, if it's somebody that's in the States and they're here and they know our hours of like operation, I'm like, no, like I will answer you tomorrow. I got it. There's nothing I can do. Like there's no form that I can send right now for you that's gonna make a difference. Just relax. We'll talk about it tomorrow. That's very important in what you're doing because it doesn't mean that you need to work very hard and kill yourself in the process in order for you to achieve success. Super important to note. And this is the last rule, the manifestation. A lot of people think, and they are very, very much triggered when somebody says, I believe in manifestations. I believe in mindset, actually attracting your reality and creating your reality. And they're triggered by it because they don't believe that manifestations are real. But yet we have data that have shown that what we focus on is what we attract. The RAS, the reticular activating system, is a proof of that. Science has given it a name, but we focus on one thing and we attract that one thing and we ignore everything else. It's the same thing when it comes to manifestation. So then if somebody just doesn't believe in that because it hasn't worked for them, it doesn't mean you have to adopt that belief system. And if you've noticed these past couple of years, it's like a shift that's happening that everybody is really starting to be more comfortable questioning things, as you should, right? I think that, at least for me, when I was growing up, something that I would always be told is like, don't question the Bible. Like you don't question it. It just is what it is. And that's it. And why? Why is that? Because there's a person that at one point got that message from somebody and then they translate it, they put it in the Bible. If you read the King James version of it, there's a lot of very gruesome stuff there that you're like, wow, like we're supposed to just abide by this and just ignore what's being said, right? As long as like it's what the priest read out loud. And this is why it's important to start questioning these things, because if you think about it, if the universe wouldn't want us to question these things, we wouldn't even have the free will to question any of the things to begin with. So I highly encourage you to start questioning these things to help you better understand yourself in this journey of challenging these constructs that have been so common for such a long time. Now he has a Brule test, okay? So I'm gonna give you 5 questions. I want you to ask these to yourself. And if you, again, are interested, I'm gonna have a PDF so that you guys are able to really dive deep into this. So feel free to join the community and get your copy so that you can download it. Again, it's free, so don't worry about it. I'm not trying to sell you the questions here. Just go ahead and use it, okay? Sometimes we're so consumed by thinking that everybody wants to take advantage of us that we don't actually accept the hand that sometimes is being lent out. So take the hand, okay? So here, question number 1, he says, is it based on trust and hope in humanity? You want to ask yourself, how quickly can I recognize this rule? Okay? is it based on trust and hope for humanity? The second one is, does it violate the golden rule? The third is, did I take it on from culture or religion? The fourth, is it based on rational choice or cognition? And the last one is, does it serve my happiness? So I really want you to dissect this, okay? And when we think about this, you want to take time to process everything that you are thinking. You want to take time to dissect these concepts, because if you don't, everything and anything is going to be something that you're going to feel uncomfortable talking about because you don't understand it yet. The moment you feel comfortable enough to question these things is the moment you start tapping into a different version of yourself, a higher frequency of yourself. You're not just part of the herd anymore. You're a leader. You're a thought leader, because you're creating these thoughts and you're understanding that it's okay to actually take a further step into understanding where these rules are coming from. With that being said, I want to thank you so much for sticking around, watching until this point, because obviously you are here and you feel called to continue to develop yourself, work on yourself, and become a better version of yourself. And for those of you that have been constantly coming back, I want to say thank you so much. You guys are what makes this word come and actually be possible. Whenever I stand here and talk to you guys, honestly, everything just flows to me. I feel my emotions very deeply, and I get comfortable sharing and being vulnerable with you guys because I really want to speak from the heart. I don't want to have something scripted. I have certain little notes that I take to not forget, because I'm a human, right? Well, I'm a human being. I'm a spiritual being having a human experience in a physical body, but there's certain things that our brain is going to forget. So I have notes that I want to make sure that I'm like actively being conscious of sharing them with you, but everything comes from the heart. And I just want to say thank you. Thank you so much for sticking around. And if there's anything that you got from today's conversation, please share this podcast with a friend. Consider subscribing, consider giving it a thumbs up. This helps the algorithm gods, right? Share the message with more people just like yourself that are in this journey of becoming a better version of themselves and tapping into the walking manifestator that they are born to be. With that being said, thank you again, and I will talk to you guys on the next one.